Honorable Attorney General.
I'm very pleased to inform that the Cabinet took a decision today in approving a recommendation of the Law Reform Commission, the Legislative Review Commission. Cabinet took the decision today to support legislation which is proposing to amend the SSA legislation, specifically to broaden the mandate of the SSA in allowing it to surveil what is now going to be referred to as serious crimes. This is a very multi-dimensional tool which is intended to harmonize all of the state assets which the various aspects of Ministry of National Security and Office of the Prime Minister have control of. For instance, the National Operations Center, the disparate pieces of equipment which were left lying around in the Ministry of National Security, be they helicopters, etc., and to centralize them so that the legislation can manage all intelligence-led obligations which Trinidad and Tobago has to deal with its international obligations, firstly, be they in precursor chemicals or psychotropic substances or small arms, weapons of mass destruction, terrorism and the fight against terrorism, national issues to deal with money laundering, etc. It is critical that there is a harmonization and a one focal point created to deal with these issues across the table. Secondly, of course, it is to ensure that the phenomenon of the siloing of information, which has led to a significant amount of inefficiency in detection and conviction, is taken care of. So it is a specific approach to de-silo the management of intelligence-led investigation. This is intended as a tool to support and only support the activities of what is referred to as the services. And the services are defined by law as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Customs, Immigration, etc. It is important, and the government has done a significant amount of work, both from an operationalization point of view and from a legislative point of view, over the last 6 months, and we are now properly teed up and ready to progress with the harmonization effort so that there can be a material improvement in detection and conviction. Crime and the management and suppression of crime, the move to eradicate this scourge from the society is the number one issue affecting us in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's high time that the people of Trinidad and Tobago saw and see the benefit of a coordinated approach towards dealing with crime, getting rid of this scourge. The second matter, which is a matter which I will share with the Minister of National Security in terms of his response, will be the progress on Friday, as is intended in Parliament, of debating and launching the Children and Family Bill. That is a new division of the Supreme Court of Judicature, intended specifically to bring to life the specialist areas to manage youth offenders, children who are charged with crimes, that is both convicted and charged issues, and also to deal with family matters. It springboards from the Family Court Pilot Project, and very specifically, it is intended to have a very dedicated subset of the judiciary with full powers merging the magistracy and the High Court jurisdictions so that there can be one suite of services to work and operationalize the children's laws. And by children's laws, I'm referring to the suite of legislation which Trinidad and Tobago has, which includes a number of pieces of law, such as the Children's Act 2012, the Children and Foster Care Nurseries, the Children's Homes, etc. All of these disparate pieces, including in particular how youth offenders are managed. And the position is one intended to ensure that there is adequate protection for the children of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is intended to be a material fillip and improvement to the operations of the Children's Authority and the judicial process. The Minister of National Security will speak to a very important decision of the Cabinet taken today relative to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Services, improvement of the arrangements to coordinate with that, and I will leave that for the Honourable Minister. There's a third issue that I wish to address this morning, and that has to deal with the claims brought forward on behalf of persons who were previously involved in sugarcane industry. The position out in the public domain at present is that there has been an allegation, a very vociferous allegation, ending in a public demonstration yesterday, that this government is somehow not acting with dispatch in relation to the claims for the payment of monies which come out of the European Union's grant funding to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I wish to put onto the record that it is a matter of long history that the sugarcane industry has been attended to by successive governments. The Cotonou Agreement, which provided welfare and protection of market for the Trinidad and Tobago cane industry, was signed, and its ending was organized by the United National Congress under the prime ministership of then Bastio Pandey. That's where the unwinding of the Caroni situation began, Caroni being synonymous with sugarcane, as is being represented in the current dynamic. Following upon that, Trinidad and Tobago is well aware that there was an ending of the sugarcane industry, and that part of the very attractive VSEP packages offered to the persons who were involved in the sugarcane industry involved not only the disposition of lands, not only the support of wages, not only the write-off of debt, not only the write-off of taxation, but there was specifically negotiated by the PNM administration a material support offered by the European Union for the retooling and re-education efforts for persons who are now displaced out of an industry. That, ladies and gentlemen, has sat in the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago's legal history in a state of idleness in the period 2010 to 2015. And I wish to put onto the public record that the government of Trinidad and Tobago on the 26th of September 2011 received specific written advice from the then Attorney General, Mr. Anand Ram Logan, at the request of persons including the last Prime Minister and the Minister of Planning in the last government, and that specific advice was in relation to the sugar diversification program, and that is the European Union funded program. That's the monies that are now being asked to be paid across to cane farmers, ex-cane farmers. And the written opinion of the Attorney General, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anand Ram Logan, some 18 pages long, specifically said that there was no merit in the payment. That is the written opinion of Anand Ram Logan to his Prime Minister, Kamla Prasad Bisesa. The written opinion is the very written opinion that the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Rawi, referred to when asked by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa in the Parliament about this issue. Now, it is a matter of record that during the August 2015 election campaign, that Dr. Rawi, in speaking at a public meeting, publicly announced that there was, in essence, a continuation of government and governance, and that obligations which were to be honored would be honored. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, as leader of the opposition, asked of Dr. Rawi a specific question in Parliament. And on the 20th of January 2016, she posed a question to Dr. Rawi, and Dr. Rawi's advice was, the legal advice was that it was not in order to make that payment. The government went ahead and made that payment against the advice of the Attorney General, and for election purposes offered to make a payment, paid half, and are now asking me to pay when I'll pay the other half. That is what Dr. Rawi said in Parliament, and the advice that he was referring to was and is the written advice of Anand Ram Logan, which condemned the payment. So when one sees today on the streets ministers of the past government walking with persons who are in distress, ex-employees of the sugarcane industry, speaking as if the written advice is the advice of the present Attorney General or the present government, one has to be very careful to pick sense from nonsense. The fact is, This matter was brought with dispatch to the current cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. The Minister of Planning was requested to produce advice in relation to the matter for the payment of these monies. The Office of the Attorney General has been requested to produce advice, and the Minister of Agriculture was also requested to give input. The reason that that process was adopted is quite simple. There being written opinion of the past Attorney General specifically preventing the payment of these monies, it is incumbent, obviously, to take the proper steps to make sure that the current government's policy to pay the monies can be approved in the proper line that it has to be approved. And I'm very pleased to say that this matter is achieving the attention of the Cabinet at present. There's only one bit of advice outstanding, and I will publicly state today that I will be requesting, as a matter of propriety, from the European Union confirmation of its position in relation to the proposed payments as are now being agitated. Because it is probably worthwhile, specifically in light of Anand Ramlogan's written 18-page opinion saying that it cannot be paid, it is worth the while to make sure that the person who has provided, or the entity that has provided the funding, gives its non-objection or neutral position in relation to the policy input that the present government will have to approve in the cabinet decision. Ladies and gentlemen, this is done only for propriety and solely to ensure that the effort of funding via the European Union in future or related transactions will not be prejudiced by the adoption of an improper process. It is unfortunate in the extreme that those who now sit in opposition, who sat on this matter for as many years as they have, now choose to march across Trinidad and Tobago and essentially, from my own point of view, seek to exploit the difficulties of persons who are agitating for a particular right. The proper process is that the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed, and that we will, in fact, be traversing this matter with care and caution, but with expedition. I will pass, after this conference, a full copy of the written opinion by Anand Ramlogan, dated, as I've referred you to, the 26th of September 2011, and that I will make this available for public consumption. But the short undertaking is that this matter is being dealt with, and being dealt with proper alacrity. The last issue to clarify in relation to this is that it is regrettable that there has been a promotion of what seems to be a cleave in our society. I wish to publicly condemn the machinations, the maneuvers that are afoot by certain people on the outside in opposition, and I'm not referring to anyone in the media by any stroke of the imagination, to try and cleave this thing along societal lines of division. This is inappropriate. This is a matter of just dotting I's and crossing T's, and certainly that this present government will make sure that legitimate expectations and proper legal obligations are mapped out in the proper way, and that decisions are then fueled and funneled in that direction.
Thank you, AG. Minister Carmen Imber, the Finance Minister, is also here, so I'll allow him to address a few matters.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I have just come very briefly to give some clarification with respect to the funding for this issue, this contentious issue, with respect to the payments to cane farmers from funding from the European Union. I saw a report in the newspapers today, and I have no reason to believe that it's not accurate, the report, that former Minister Tewari, now MP for Caroni East, Caroni East, Central, said that the money allocated to pay cane farmers was received in October of 2015, and therefore there should be no difficulty with the government paying the money. So what he essentially said is that the European Union had agreed to provide this funding to pay cane farmers, and that the money had been received, a second tranche of $75 million had been received in October 2015. This is in today's Express on page 3 at the bottom. I've checked, and that information is not true. The second tranche of funds was not received. And the reason why it was not received is that there were certain conditionalities that had to be met in order for that second tranche to be disbursed. And I can just give you an idea of what they were. The former government had been told that they would have to meet certain indicators comprising 2,000 acres of former Caroni lands under agricultural production, a plan formulated for integrated water management, and local agricultural production would have to increase by 10%. Those were the conditionalities that the European Union had imposed on the second tranche of funds. And my understanding is that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, so the money was not disbursed by the European Union. So I just, as my colleague to the right is telling me, as they should very well know, so that what Dr. Tuari has said is just not true. So I simply came to the press conference just to clarify that.
We have to other ministers to make their statement. Minister Garcia.
Cabinet has taken a decision to establish a task force to review the GATE program, GATE, Government Assistance for Tertiary Education. I just want to give you a brief history of GATE. GATE was introduced in 2004, and since then, 194,000 students have been funded through this program. This program is being offered among 65 institutions, and over the last 11 years, the government has expended the sum of $5.58 billion to fund this program. For fiscal 2016, the sum allocated was $650 million. There have been growing concerns in many areas. One is whether the GATE program is contributing towards economic development. There is a lack of comprehensive data with respect to the graduation rates, the graduation employment figures, market demands, and student migration. There's also the lack of monitoring and tracking of students who were funded by GATE. And because of these concerns, Cabinet today decided on the establishment of this task force. This task force has to submit its report by July this year, July 2016. Some of the work that this task force must be engaged in would be as follows: to review the policy guidelines that govern GATE, to review mechanisms for reducing the overall cost of GATE funding, and to set criteria for the eligibility of programs and also the eligibility of institutions. Members of the task force are as follows: Mr. Errol Sims, Chairman, he's a management consultant. Ms. Teresa Davidson, she's the Director of Funding and Grants at the Ministry of Education. Ms. Nivelle Niles, she's an Education Research Specialist. Dr. Gaynell Holdip from the Ministry of Education, she belongs to the Scholarship and Advanced Training Division. Two representatives from the Ministry of Finance, a representative from the Ministry of Planning and Development, a representative from the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise, a representative from the Tobago House of Assembly, Dr. Ralph Balgobin, representing the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, Ms. Natasha Subero, representing the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Richard Saunders, the campus registrar at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus, Dr. Ruby Allen from the University of Trinidad and Tobago. She's in the area of quality assurance. And Dr. Hyacinth Guy, representing the Human Resource Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Folande Mutato, representing the Women's Institute for Alternative Development, and the president of the Guild of Undergraduates at St. Augustine campus at the University of the West Indies. So these are members of the task force who have been appointed, and we are hoping that their report would be submitted to the Ministry of Education no later than July this year. I also like to inform the media that next Tuesday, the recipients of the President's Award will receive their medals at a ceremony to be held at the South Campus, SAPA, and the awards will be given to the President's Medal Gold for Higher Education to two most outstanding students as a result of the CAPE examinations that were held in 2015. The President's Medal Silver for students who have excelled in the area of the CSEC examination, and the two students who have excelled in the essay examinations. And as I indicated, this ceremony will be held at SAPA on Tuesday next week, Tuesday the 15th of March.
Minister Dillion, make a statement.
I wish to inform you that today Cabinet has approved the establishment of a child protection unit in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It of course realized that within recent time there has been an increase in incidents of crime against children. In fact, our statistics between January 2010 and December 2014 highlights that there were about 1,575 males and approximately 2,407 females who were victims of crime. A further analysis of that data also revealed that there were 1,075 males were victims and roughly about 1,961 cases of sexual offenses against females. Of course, within recent times, we've also seen an increase in crimes against children. As against that background, the Commissioner of Police, with my concurrence, determined that we needed a dedicated and focused entity to treat with incidents of crime against children. And so this entity has been approved today. And it will comprise of 1 superintendent of police, 2 assistant superintendents, 10 inspectors, 18 sergeants, 28 corporals, 110 constables, and of course we're going to use about 36 special reserve police. Additionally, there will be 1 business operations assistant and 1 other business operations assistant. This entity will be spread across the 8 divisions in Trinidad and the 1 division in Tobago, throughout the entire 9 divisions throughout Trinidad and Tobago. We believe that treating with the incidents of crime against children should be one based on a concentrated effort. Notwithstanding, we understand that we know that murder is a barometer by which we are judged in most jurisdictions. There are other incidents that we must pay attention to, in particular, incidents against our children. The children are the future of Trinidad and Tobago. And within recent times, we determined that there must be a concentrated and focused effort to treat with these incidents. But even in treating with that, the question of the kind of training that is required comes about. And so within this unit, the person will be selected specifically to treat with children. They will be trained appropriately, and the unit will be dedicated and focused throughout the 9 divisions to treat with incidents of crime and criminality against children. Yes. And of course, the qualifications let me just get a sense of the qualifications here, quite frankly. It really speaks to police officers who have a certain kind of temperament, police officers who have a sense of education, and also an affinity to treating with children, so that there's a sort of, not just a soft approach, but also an area in which they would be programmed to treat with children in particular and incidents against children. So that just in summing up really, this new unit is one of the other concentrated areas that in terms of going forward, one of the strategies really deals with concentration of a number of different issues within the criminal environment, within the crime and security environment. So while we treated the hard issues of murder and serious crimes, we tend that we must pay particular attention to our children and crime against children.
Thank you very much, Minister.